make it back to the park exhausted and out of breath. We're fortunate that nobody questioned us along the way. I finally let my legs stumble into a halt, allowing my body the rest it's so desperately crying out for. Her Majesty, meanwhile,
ごめんなさい。シキの体のこと、まだよく考えていなかった。
is exhibiting some uncharacteristically reflective behavior. Maybe I've started to go on a bit soft too. Regardless of the reason, I just can't stand to see her make that kind of face.
いい。結果的には誰にも見つからなかったし。俺もちょっと言い過ぎた。アルクエイドがぶっ飛んでるのは今に始まったことじゃないしな。だからそんなに気にしないでくれ。
Screwball is very funny.
そう？シキが怒ってないなら私も嬉しいけど。
ああ、怒ってない怒ってない。でもやりすぎなのは本当だぞ。次から大事を起こすときはせめて一声かけてからにしてくれ。
協力無比のコンビだものね。
I'm the best.
That face, the smug in her eyes, oh my god, I love that. Definitely saving that. I'm a little worried just which definition of strong she's going for here. You need to take your ass home. I must have let my guard down after we stopped for a breather, because for a split second I feel like I'm about to black out. It's as though I'm watching the contents of my own skull sloshing around and slipping out, and I come this close to collapsing to my knees.
Shiki?
Arcueid starts rushing over to me, but I hold out a hand to reassure her that I'm fine.
少し疲れたみたいだ。ベンチに座れば落ち着くよ。
I ease myself onto the bench and catch my breath. Arcueid must be worried about me or something, as she starts lecturing me about my eyes.
そっか、死の線を見すぎたのね。シキ、あなたは自分の目をどこまで理解しているの？
It's as if she's really a teacher or something. According to Arcueid, my eyes aren't seeing death so much as deciphering it. The lines are apparently only the afterimage of death, and it's the points that the lines begin and end at that are actually death itself. The degree of perception requires to see them as far beyond what humans are capable of. As such, if I overuse my eyes, my brain is going to burn out long before my eyes do, meaning I shouldn't look at the lines too much.
なんだそりゃ。自分で俺を振り回しておいて。
I smile wearily at how self-serving Arcueid can be. Her telling me to help her out is basically the same as ordering me to use my mystic eyes. She's well aware of this, yet still tells me not to push myself too hard, a strange stance to take. Regardless, her explanation, half of which goes completely over my head, continues. Professor Arcueid is quite the talker. I listen to her, occasionally chiming in so she knows I'm paying attention. In truth, I don't feel tired in the slightest anymore, but rather than bring our conversation to a close, I continued to gaze at the woman in white before me. It wasn't that long ago that she seemed so incredibly frail, but now she's bursting with life. She's positively radiant.
ちょっと聞いてるの？私、シキは危ないって話をしているのよ。笑うところじゃないでしょ。
She's mad at me for real. Still, it's not like I'm smiling on purpose, it's just, how could I not smile after seeing her this lively?
なんだよ、偉そうに。ブローブにやられた時は、そっちも危なかったくせに。
あの時はあの時でしょ。何よ、シキは私が苦しんでいた方がいいの？
Of course not. I don't want to see something like that ever again.
ああ、バランス的にお前は苦しんでるぐらいでちょうどいい。まあ、でも
That's the sort of thing I'd only ever say if it forced to conform to society's expectations. If I were to speak my own feelings truthfully from the bottom of my heart,
元気なアルクエイドを見ているのは嬉しい。お前はそのままが一番だと思うよ。
and if I could make one wish, it would be that I could look upon that smile forever. What? Why is she charging right at me?
待て、イノシシかお前。
I leap to my feet, but there's no way I can dodge her. Arcueid rushes right over to where I'm standing in front of the bench and clamps both of my hands in hers.
私も同じ。やっぱり一緒だね、私たち。
The innocence of her smile takes my breath away. In an attempt to reciprocate her trust in me, I open my mouth to speak. And yet... At this crucial moment, I'm assailed by a headache so powerful that it threatens to knock me unconscious. Ciel's here. Jesus, and what a moment to make yourself known. I cling to the bench to stop myself from completely collapsing to the ground. Ciel was over there like, I'm sick of these motherfuckers being happy, and then just threw that knife right between them. Either out of jealousy or, I don't know. Probably jealousy. I take a few deep breaths and let the dizziness pass. Fortunately, the headache was just the one sudden twinge. I should be back on my feet again in no time.
悪い。体力、まだ戻ってなかった。
Oh, that wasn't Ciel? That was just your
アルクエイ
body?
ドの言う通り、魔眼の使いすぎってやつだな。
Okay, so it was Ciel. That's right. Cool. Because of Arcueid's face, I kinda... yeah. Arcueid doesn't say anything. That bitch! She's here! Yeah. She simply holds her breath for a moment, as if she'd witnessed something unbelievable. And then...
そうなんだ。それは大変ね、シキ。
She giggles softly before making her way back to the center of the plaza, her steps light. Yeah, I think it's about time I head back to the mansion. I'll let you girls squabble a little bit. I'm out of here. That's what I do. Time passes. Arcueid isn't as chatty as she was before, but it's clear as day that she is in a good mood. So good, in fact, that I'm left scratching my head as to why. We're so engrossed in discussing what to do from here that midnight takes us completely by surprise.
もう日付が変わっちゃったね。
So did Ciel just send a warning shot or something? That's what I'm guessing. Seems like it's a new day already.
今夜はここでお別れにしましょう。明日もよろしくね、シキ。
まあ、一日で終わることじゃないしな。待ち合わせ場所はここで、時間は今日と同じでいいか？
ええ、一日も待つのは退屈だけど、シキにはまだシキの生活があるものね。
Yeah.
邪魔はできないわ。
Yeah, so I guess even in Ciel we still have these meetups. Interesting. Honestly, I would think the opposite, like we would hang out with Ciel at night instead. But nope, still Arcueid. 10 p.m. Arcueid flashes me a nonchalant smile and leaps away from the park. She really does just show up and disappear at the drop of a hat.
って、感心してる場合じゃない。俺も早く戻らないと。
If I leave my room unoccupied for too long, I risk my excursion being discovered. I get the feeling that ship may have already sailed, but I'd still better hurry back to the mansion as fast as I can. It's after midnight. There isn't a single light on inside the mansion. Instead of entering through the front door, I slip around to the rear entrance in the west wing and make my way inside. It's the same door I used when I left, and unfortunately it's still unlocked. I crept my way inside softly, careful to not wake Hisui or Kawaku-san, whose rooms are in the west wing. I take a deep breath and plop down onto the bed. I must be exhausted after all that walking, because I immediately collapse as though the bed itself is sucking me in. Better hope there's not blood on your clothes. I made a promise with Arcueid. By some twist of fate, it seems I've once again gotten myself involved in some kind of mess.
仕方ないよな。放っておけないんだから。
Or maybe I didn't want to leave that miraculously beautiful, yet inhuman being alone. That same thing. I'm struck by a sharp but fleeting headache. What was that? It feels somehow different to the headaches I've had before. It wasn't painful so much as shameful. Like my own self was admonishing me for how foolish it was to think that she's beautiful. Slowly but surely, my eyelids begin to droop. I surrender myself to the enveloping hand of weariness and allow it to drag my body and consciousness down into the dark abyss of sleep. As I fall into that overpowering darkness, I attempt to reflect on just what part of my thoughts were foolish, but I am cut short as my consciousness is dashed to pieces. It's definitely Ciel, whatever that little dash is. I don't know what it could be. Like, especially like with how Arcueid reacted to it. Like, it's definitely not something natural or bodily. I can't sleep. I must have too much on my mind. My brain is filled with a jumble of thoughts. Whenever I close my eyes, it's like they all suddenly come into focus. I just woke up, so I won't be able to go back to sleep again right away. I reluctantly heave myself out of bed. Book time? At a time like this, nothing beats a bit of reading. I put on a robe so that I don't catch a chill, and start rummaging through my luggage. Unfortunately, I've already read all these books well enough to know them by heart. Oh well. I'm just trying to kill time here. I shouldn't be such a stickler about novelty. I pick up a well-thumbed book and head over to the conservatory. Quite cultured that there's a room dedicated to reading here in the mansion. I sit down on a chair and start flipping through the pages of the book. The first emotion I felt was actually that of pity. Not anger, nor disappointment. Everything I laid eyes on just seemed so pitiful. Naturally, I myself was the most pitiful of all. He was born at the end of the 15th century. As a child of a wealthy family and the recipient of an expensive education, he grew up healthy both in mind and body. He understood what it meant to be good, but would not countenance evil, no matter what form it took. The populace revered him as a prodigy, and took it for granted that he would dedicate himself to further improving their lands. However, he defied his parents' wish that he inherit their estate, aspiring instead to become a man of the cloth. At the time, the corruption within the church, the pursuit of worldly desires by its proponents, had already been festering for a while, but the true extent had yet to become widely known. His parents were disappointed, but still happily sent him off in accordance with his wishes. Perhaps they thought it possible that he would be the one to air out the stink of corruption that pervaded their country. Naturally, there was never any chance that the lone son of some noble family with no backers could change the world. He passes through many cities, came to know many people, personally observed the start of the many things, yet always arrived at the same conclusion. Humans are wonderful. Among the many children the Lord had sown unto the earth, man was the most excellent. This weak, fragile, tiresome, hopeless animal was nevertheless the most beautiful in all creation. The Lord's design was revealed through human nature, their dogged inability to live without seeking purpose. He met with new people on a daily basis, people who lived in the city, people who had come to visit it, anyone he could find. To exchange words with strangers and learn how they lived their lives was his source of joy. There is a truth to be gleaned from each and every life. There was meaning to be found even in the most trivial, the most banal of lives. He strove to understand as many people as he could. His fellow students laughed at him. Isn't 10 people enough? His teacher scolded him. Keep it to no more than 100, will you? The praebusters preached to him. You should try to know tens of thousands. Only his one trusted friend predicted what was in store for him. That's a living hell you're bound for. Just as his friend had said, by the time he had painstakingly recorded the lives of over 1,000 people, he'd hit a wall. Not because his will had broken from finding the act uninteresting or unrewarding. Rather, it was the complete opposite. He wanted to know even more people. 1 or 2,000 simply wasn't enough. He had to collect more and more truths. But it was never enough. Far from it. Even if he were to live to 60 and spend every single day talking to people, he still wouldn't even be able to speak to everyone in his city. That wasn't all. As he worked, more and more people kept being born. The world kept expanding. New possibilities continued to appear. Oh, how precious little time we humans have. In retrospect, he had never actually been happy as an individual. He had been spoken of as a prodigy, but the people around him had simply gotten the wrong idea. He was a man of thoroughly unremarkable talents. If his talents as a human were to be scored and tallied up, their sum would be no more impressive than those of any of his neighbors. It was simply that those talents were particularly focused in a certain direction. He was not interested in the essence of a man, such as the essence of the world. In exchange for holding this interest toward the whole, he lacked the ability to love the individual. In exchange for his capacity for self-improvement, he lacked any ambitions of power. In exchange for his dreams toward the future, he lacked any sentiments about the present. The point being, he was very much inhuman. Yet, in spite of that, he was a man of unparalleled virtue. He loved the purpose of mankind, loved the lives of good people, and held a faith more ardent than anyone else's. It was obviously impossible for him to single-handedly change the face of religion, but he should have been able to, or at least become a small part of that change. The prodigy who loved humanity, but could not love people, was undoubtedly a saint, at least until that moment came. This is the story of a child, once set before he began studying other people. Though he was still a child, his mind had already matured to the point where he could not write off the mysterious as something beyond his grasp. The boy who had already grasped the essence of society found little mysterious. Rain, clouds, even ghosts, all could be unraveled. It was those mysteries that still could not be explained by the current era that intrigued him. Things whose existence everyone else took for granted. It was these things that still captivated his childlike curiosity. Things such as the brilliance of the stars, so ignored by his young peers. That's why.
私は今でも覚えている。父の目を盗んで一夜だけの旅に出たあの時間を。
Who is this talking?
高く高く。
Is it Roa?
何の支えもなく私。
Because I did hear, like, somewhere, I don't know if it was explained in the game, or at least from what I played, but I'm pretty sure Roa was a priest before he became a dead apostle. Or something along those lines. Because his voice kind of sounds like him, but I'm not sure if it is. A white disk shone in the sky, particularly obscured by clouds. What was it? What were its aims? Just what made it thick? Those were the feelings of anticipation, of curiosity, of fear, held towards something beyond one's grasp. All these were engraved in his heart as shining stars. This was the driving force that set everything in motion. Oh, how sinful it was, how foolish. It was then that he swore to the Heavenly Father that he would lay bare the theory that underpinned the universe. However, he would soon come to learn that the essence he had resolved to spend his life uncovering had already been deciphered by his predecessors. The house of God had already come into possession of vast quantities of information it wished to suppress. Mathematics, astronomy, geology, history, architecture, economics, medicine, agriculture, and finally, the alchemy that would later become chemistry. The House of God had collected all of the cutting-edge theories and knowledge of his era under one roof and locked them away. It was both the world's greatest academic institute and a graveyard of wisdom. Apes fashioned tools. Man built civilization. Scholars read the stars, devised observational methods, and before they had even attained the knowledge of how to soar through the sky themselves, had acquired the necessary wisdom to estimate the extent of the universe. What was the stone he had seen high above him that night? Even the answer to how the earth was governed had already been discovered. Nothing in creation broke this pattern. Everything mysterious had already had its general principles brought to light. There was an obscure philosopher who once wrote, "The next 1,000 years will be spent doing nothing more than proving these things we now know." The world continued to be explained. The universe continued to be given meaning. When he discovered that this was already being attempted, it was not joy that took hold of him. It was fear, together with an inexpressible anger. It was because I had given up that I couldn't overlook this. But what is this? Just where does this end? If humanity goes on like this, the day will inevitably come when it becomes possible to know everything. So then why? Why does this body of mine have such precious little time? His human lifespan was pitiful on the face of the world's breath. He was mortified by the thought that even though he had lived for the sake of knowing everything, he would die in obscurity, never knowing anything. As he sought to uncover the purpose of humanity, he was forced to realize that human life had no meaning. Anyone should be able to understand just how miserable of a conclusion it was for him. It was at this time that he first began to fear death. Death was frightening. The futility of life was frightening. The infinite expanse of the world was frightening. He had gained so much knowledge, and yet he did not know a single thing. But what terrified him was not his own demise. It was seeing his purpose fall apart. He needed to alter his thinking. There was still nothing eternal to be found on Earth. So if everything kept expanding and changing, then he simply had to wait for it to be complete. He strayed from the path that rose before him. He turned his back on the ladder, reaching into heaven. What he wanted, what he had been searching for, was simple. He wanted to know everything, and in order to do so, he needed infinite time. Oh, this is totally Roa. Oh my god. It's quite ironic. The man who so feared the infinite expansion of humanity found his solution in the pursuit of infinite time. Yeah, this is totally Roa, 100%. Because fucking reincarnation and infinity is this whole thing, right? So it has to be Roa. Well, breaking the ties with us now isn't a bad call. The rapid spread of the Gutenberg press poses an existential threat, to say nothing of the Reformation. It's going to get rough for a while, both of us at the church for the association. Though, I imagine it's going to hit the Mages Association harder than it will hit us. All manner of superstitions will be wiped off the face of the earth by the spread of the mass printing. I'm sure the foundations that underpin the arcane will groan loudly under the strain. Aha! So that's why you've chosen now to make your move. Both parties have their hands full dealing with their own problems. Even if some mad prodigy were to strike out for the true ancestor's castle, it'd be a while before they gave chase. You're a real opportunist, huh? Gonna take this chance to try and nab the eternity that's closest at hand, are you? Of course not. Vampires are merely hard to kill and slow to age. They're far from eternal. They will serve as nothing more than one of my stepping stones. For now, I will perform a clean suicide, so as to die a human death. Aha! The man who seeks eternity rushes headlong towards his own demise. How ironic. So, do you intend to leave the church tomorrow, then? I will leave the burial classroom in your care. I have no aspirations of becoming a bishop. I burned through the eternity of my inheritance to make it this far. It was high time I made my decision. On one side, the son of some provincial magnate. On the other hand, a woman who is not, but the stigma she bears. Two comrades who failed to make it to the rank of bishop together, and who will no longer count on each other for comfort. The end. Well, whatever. So then, you're still planning on finishing your magecraft theory, I take it. I have no intention of leaving the church, so I can't go down the same path as you. Well, luckily for me, I'm a woman. Guess I'll pop some kids out so I can tell them all about you. Oh, and what will you do then? Narbarek. I guess something about how a new dead apostle is gonna make his debut in a century or so. Make sure they understand that trying to fight him would be pointless, and they should just leave him alone. Oh, you won't have to wait a whole century. I suspect I'll become a target for Inquisition within your lifetime. This body will make for a fine bloodsucker. 10 years should prove plenty. Huh, stop spouting nonsense. You'll have to start over as one of the dead. It'd take even a once-in-a-decade genius like yourself a century at least. The world is practically a living hell, the ruthlessness of which can't even begin to be compared to ours. If I were to do everything by the book, you'd be right. However, if I were to become a top-ranking bloodsucker on day one, the rules of their world wouldn't apply. I don't follow. What do you mean? Oh, it's quite simple. I'm sure you're aware that the power of a dead apostle is influenced by the true ancestor who drank their blood. Which means, if I'm aiming to become the greatest dead apostle, I simply have to get my blood sucked by the greatest true ancestor. So he had a plan from the start of how this whole reincarnation trick was gonna work? And so he set up the beef with Arcueid to kinda like set that in motion? And who's this Narbarek chick? Interesting developments going on.